Okay. Well, I think we've got quite a bit of the folks in this session right now. So let's begin, shall we? You ready, Dallas?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. So now on for our next session. Get ready for the first fast track. Fast tracks are bundles of speakers addressing like topics, but don't blink. This information is served up hot and fast. So first up, upping your standards game with Melinda Ronca-Battista. Hi, beautiful. And Mr.
Hi,
Gary.
everybody. Woo!
So I'm going to introduce and give a little background. Melinda has worked for the Tribal Air Monitoring Support Center, which is a collaborative between Northern Arizona University and the US EPA for 20 years. She has also worked with an international team of manufacturers, regulators, measurement providers, and experts to develop radon measurement QA standards for ANSI-AARST MS-QA, and she co-chaired the committee that, I lost my spot. Co-chaired the committee for radon measurement performance standards, MSPC, and is honored to work with international radon associations to manage the international intercomparison of radon collaboration chambers. Yay, Melinda.
Hello. So I am going to talk for 10 minutes. So I'm starting my timer.
Let me do me a solid here. Let me introduce Gary too, and then I think you guys are back to back. That's okay, sweetie. Then we have Mr. Gary Hodgden. He has served for more than 2 decades on the AARST Technical and Science Committee. His work involves conveying committees on a frequent basis to hash out diverse opinions across groups of field experts and other stakeholders that include non-governmental health professionals, educators, scientists, state health departments, and federal agencies. Because ANSI is the formal link between America and the International Standards Organizations, the ISO, Mr. Hodgden now also participates in worldwide standards relative to radon. Welcome, Melinda and Gary.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. I assume everything will work unless you tell me to stop. So that'll be my approach. And I need to show my screen. You need to share my screen. I can only do what you tell me.
Okay.
Bear with me.
The host screen sharing feature is disabled. Well, so what a fall, what a symposium. Oh my God. And I promise not to waste your time. While she is getting my screen to show, I'm going to tell you a little story about real life versus TV. So we've all been watching a lot of TV, right? And we've all heard about quality assurance people. Well, I just want to make sure you guys know that real life is not the same as Westworld, because in the first season of Westworld, pretty early on in season 1, both the QA people were killed off. So that happens in a TV show, right? And look what Westworld turned into. But that doesn't actually happen in real life. In real life, QA is part of your responsibilities when you make any sort of measurement, especially when you're measuring a radioactive material. So in real life, the QA people are not going to get killed off early in the season. In real life, people like me or Nate Burden or Phil Jenkins or Bruce Sneed will get called to be expert witnesses, which we have, for looking at the results of radon measurements made to determine the need for or the success of mitigation. So I assume I can share my screen now and show you some fun PowerPoints. So,
are you able to share your screen, Melinda?
Yes, I'm sharing my screen now. Do you see it?
Yes, excellent.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, I am just a scribe. So I worked with all these people and more to develop the MSQA, the Measurement Systems Quality Assurance Standard for radon measurements in homes. And it was a really, really big deal. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell you guys how to get your quiz questions right, because that's all I care about at the beginning of any session. So get these questions right. Continuous radon monitor comparison checks can now be done with any device type, as long as it's for the same duration, not just another continuous radon monitor. Measurement results are defensible when bracketed in time by passing QC results. So if you provide somebody a measurement and they're going to use that measurement result to decide on the need for spending money to estimate their health risks for whatever purpose, if you're selling something, you need to be confident that what you're selling is supported by passing QC results before that measurement was produced and after that measurement was produced. That's very, very key. And that's why documentation is so important. QA documentation doesn't stop when the lab, if you're working with a laboratory, sends you an instrument. QA documentation continues with you. I have done a lot of audits and I've been audited a lot of times for all sorts of different types of pollutants and in different environments. And 100% of the time, as an auditor or as the recipient of an audit, more documentation is needed. If it is not written down, and this is a line from a Tom Clancy novel, actually, if it's not written down, it did not happen, essentially, because you need those evidence, the evidence of your QC checks and their results to buttress your measurement result that you're selling, basically. People ask me all the time, all my QC results are passing, my blanks are 0. Why do I need to do this? That's exactly why you need to do this. You need to keep it up, keep doing what you're doing, and keep up the documentation. So the principles, I'm not going to get into a lot of information about how we derive the numbers. I'm just going to tell you that the principle is short. We wanted it to be like the Constitution, right? So these are the principles, and you guys have to implement them according to your system, whatever your system is, whether you're 100 people, one person, however you work. If you adhere to the principles, then you've met the requirements of the QA standard. We didn't make up these. We didn't make up these standards. These are based on national and international standards for measuring radioactive materials. And these legal requirements include measures to assess precision. And I know you guys all remember the bias and precision dance. So precision is the wiggle where try as hard as you might, you cannot measure anything perfectly, but you want to estimate and measure your level of imprecision, which is usually estimated with side-by-side checks. You want to estimate and keep low bias. Bias is the jump, where you have a calibration error, you have contamination, you have a systematic flow rate issue, so that every single measurement is biased slightly low or slightly high. And measures to assess and limit both of these kinds of errors need to be in your QA program. We spent 4 years on these standards. I think to some extent, sometimes I just beat people into submission, into agreeing with one another. We looked at spreadsheets, we did calculations, we did all sorts of theoretical assumptions, and every limit that we have in the QA standard is based on documented rationales. So we didn't just adopt something internationally. We tried to make this specific to the operations in this country, the way they're done with the equipment that they're done with. And another principle was that we really didn't want to limit the number of measurements that people make. We want more radon measurements, but we want them to be valid. So again, this standard applies to measurements that are intended to be used to determine the need for or success of mitigation. 48-hour measurements. just short-term measurements made for purposes of diagnosing ingress of radon into the basement. You can do those for your own diagnostic purposes. Ideally, you don't make your limits based upon our assumptions, but upon your data. Everything you do is to prove that your operations are in control, as opposed to how they were operating in Westworld, by the way, after they killed off the QA people, both of whom were women. Strange. Okay, so every time you determine how far off we are, and this applies to ozone measurements, this applies to landing something on the moon, how far off we are from the target. And the target is always our best estimate of the truth. So when you're doing side-by-side measurements or comparison checks, your best estimate of the truth is the average. And all you really want to know is how far off you are by a percentage from the best estimate of the truth, which in this case is the average of the two. Now, spikes, your best estimate of the truth is the chamber concentration, right? So that's why spikes have the statistic of relative percent error, how far off you are from the chamber concentration. Real briefly, I'm just going to show you continuous monitor QC, comparison checks every 10th 48-hour measurement. They don't have to be the same method. You can take a femtotech and you can take an electret ion chamber and make simultaneous measurements, and that's a check, right? That's a check on how well your continuous radon monitor is operating. Document it. You have to do annual calibrations, but no cross checks. So we took that requirement out of the QA standard in order to make it easier to make more, better measurements. We want to support making measurements. The default warning limits are based on assumptions. I'm not going to go into this, but I'm going to say that you are doing better than the QA standard assumed for driving these limits. And again, it's designed as a framework so that it's flexible. Its implementation is up to you. And thanks to all the people who assisted with this standard. It really was a really big effort, and we had to keep pulling ourselves to reach agreement on this standard. Just one hint before I log off, email yourself your results of your QA checks. The easiest way to document your QC check results and your QA activities is to dictate them into your phone, send yourself an email, save those in a specific box in your email, and then periodically make any calculations, but document by dictating into your phone. Woo, okay, that's it. Sorry, I went a minute over. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Melinda.
Mr. Hodgden, it's your turn.
I'm sorry. I thought Michael was coming next, but you hung up. Is that what you're saying?
Well, Gary, I think you were kind of on call to like troubleshoot with Melinda during her speedy 10 minutes. But if you want to hold off, we can have Mike go up next and then you can come back on for the three of you. How does that sound?
Oh, I thought Melinda was fine. Let's go to
Okay,
Mike.
there we go. Well, thank you. And if you, Melinda and Gary, just sit by the side, turn your videos off, and Mike.
He retired after 31 years as a research scientist at the New York State Health Laboratories and as an assistant professor for the School of Public Health at Albany. Now we'll turn it over, and congratulations on your retirement, Mike.
Okay. And I assume you can see this?
Yes,
sir.
we can.
Okay, let's start from here. Okay, so good morning, everyone. After several years of committee meetings and several presentations at past AARST symposia, I'm pleased to announce that we have the availability of this new ANSI-approved standard called Protocols for Collection, Transfer, and Measurement of Radon in Water. And today I will give you an overview of the contents. Oh, I should say that this is the standard, and this is available, I believe, at the AARST bookstore, AARST store. But as I said, this took many years to develop. I would say maybe 10, and maybe Gary wants to say something about that, but we did eventually come together. So there are, as I said, I'm going to talk about some of the overview. There are some of the things in the beginning of this document talk about the requirements for sampling of radon and water. One of those will be a training requirement. This, I suspect, would be an hour or two of training by some approved association, not, from your cousin showing you how to do it. The main thing is also in here is to run the water long enough to get a fresh sample. There are examples in there of how long the water should be run. For instance, if you had this 1 diameter piping and it had a 250-foot well depth, maybe 50 feet of piping through the home. There are calculations there, there's also tables, you can just look this up. You'd see you have to dispose of somewhere between 12 and 15 gallons of water. Now, you have to, again, like Melinda was saying, you have to document this somehow. So I would think the easiest way is to have 5-gallon buckets and count the number of 5-gallon buckets, document that. You also can have these temperature guns that I've noticed become very much in common use today at any doctor's office, anywhere you go, where you can shoot the water temperature in the beginning and shoot the water temperature after 15 gallons, record those temperatures as proof that you did do something, that you did remove the correct amount of water. You'd also want to remove the aerator because that will introduce air into your sample, and you prefer that we collect prior to any treatment or holding tanks if possible. You also want to be using glass bottles, and the cap has to be either aluminum liner that you see pictured here. There's also I use a ring cap, which is shown with the red dot. I was sending these out to people and they were coming back with upside down septa. So I put a ring on the top, and in the instruction said, look at the ring through, see the green dot through the ring. This also allowed, and this liner and this particular had a PTFE, or what we would call Teflon liner. And sometimes the bubble when you cap this, you get a little bubble burst up through that ring, which is very nice. Told you it was under a lot of pressure. For field operations, some of the things that I said, you're going to have the spigot is going to be a nice slow flow, not fast, not dripping, but somewhere in between. Remove the aerator. There's also guidance on how to, if you're going to use a hose, you have to use a clear hose, make sure there's no air bubbles in there, which will have a tendency to naturally collect. And there's also some guidance on having a pressure tank or a holding tank that you cannot get a sample prior to those. As far as field operations, you have to prepare. There's documentation that you have to fill out of why, what the purpose is, the name of the collector, the devices, the method, the exact location of the water spigot, the volume of water expelled, and how it was confirmed, maybe with the temperature gun, as I said, and the exact location and date, because as you all know, once you collect this water sample, the radon will begin decaying, so the laboratory will need to know the exact collection date and time. I have next a few photos of some different ways of collecting samples. There are a couple different recommended ways. This one would be where you would put the outlet of the faucet underneath the water as soon as possible in a bowl. Submerge that, fill up the bowl. You can see it overrunning on the right here. So this is basically filling up the water, nice fresh water into that bowl. Take your bottle, put it as it is capped already underwater, open it up underwater and fill it up and cap it underwater. This is one method. You also can use this method, which uses a little funnel. These are very inexpensive. And you just, again, submerge the faucet outlet under the water, so the water is being somewhat over the edge. and also being forced down into the collection bottle. This type of collection device would be good for your outdoor faucets, as I have pictured down in the bottom right there. The bowl system would probably not work well with the faucet shown, the spigot. And you would have to maybe have some type of adapter with a hose. An easier alternative would probably just to go to this funnel mechanism and get that submerged underneath there. And as many of you collectors know already, the outdoor faucet is typically not undergoing any type of treatment. So this is typically a very nice place to collect your raw water sample without any treatment issues. This is actually a blend, a hybrid of those two, in which I have the bottle underwater in a bowl of water, and the bottle is actually being filled underwater again through that funnel. Inspect your sample. Make sure you have no bubbles in it. If you do, pour it out, collect another sample. But for every bubble you have, even if they're small, they will have a tendency to merge into a large bubble by the time you get to the laboratory. And one thing you need to take care of is during transport of these samples to the laboratory is that they are packaged correctly so they don't freeze in the winter and they don't overheat in the summer. Freezing, of course, will burst it, and the mail gets upset when they get wet mail. And in the summer, if it's too hot, you will have bubbles. The gas will come out of solution. You'll start forming more and more bubbles in here. And every time you have a bubble, the volume is something like 4 to 1 of radon in that bubble, as it would be an equal amount of water. Okay, so anyways, as I said, the collector has to complete an accreditation training course. You want to collect all samples in duplicate, check for these, all for bubbles, forward them to the lab within 24 hours because of the radon decay. As I said, the transport, you want to package these to avoid extreme temperature differences. And the main thing in the red there is to avoid collecting water that has any contact with the air, because as soon as it contacts the air, radon will come out of solution. Some of the approved analytical methods, I think, are currently liquid scintillation counting, electret, and continuous radon monitors. They are by far the most prevalent. I have done some inner comparisons, and these seem to be almost 99% of the analytical methods. There are a couple others, but all these laboratories will need to demonstrate a proficiency, either through inner comparisons, somehow to demonstrate that the value that they are giving for radon in water is indeed correct. Laboratories, here are some of the reporting requirements. They're in the report going back to the homeowner is the name and address, of course, of the homeowner, the collector's names, in the measurement results, the associated error, and the average of the duplicate measurement results. There will be some guidance given. So we have in this document suggested a limit of 4,000 picocuries per liter. So if there's guidance below that or in guidance for values greater than that. Other health guidance would be test for radon for indoor air. These are, again, in the reports. There'll be, if it's a high amount of radon in water, they may suggest doing other radioisotopes, such as bacteria. And this is, lastly, there's a very small section in there on household remediation of radon water. There is a AARST committee that is developing mitigation methods for radon in water. But I'll tell you now it seems like the aeration and the activated carbon are going to be the primary remediation methods. The primary thing you have to remember with these is they will need annual maintenance. And with that, I believe the conclusions are that, again, the trainer will need some training. I mean, the collector will need some training. The proper use of collection techniques. So you got to have a qualified laboratory. You got to have the results and how they're reported, and something on mitigation recommendations. And with that, I will return it back to you.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great job. And Melinda, thank you. So I think we've got some time for questions and answers. Amy or Nicole, do we have any questions that came through on the chats?
This is Jane. There is one question for Melinda. How often is bracketing needed? And the question is from Kevin Stewart. Excuse me. I asked, since let's say you have a great QC pass, but you do lots of measurements, then the next QC fails. Does that mean all of those measurements that are therefore not bracketed also fail? That's the question. Well, you're muted.
Melinda, you're muted, sweetie.
You need to immediately repeat that failed QC result. It may or may not. It just depends upon what you diagnose the problem to be. And keep in mind that these QC results are based upon a distribution. So a distribution of how theoretically your instruments perform. So I would say it's impossible to say as a blanket statement. That's why you need to make QC results fairly frequently. If they're essentially free, if you've got more than one method available to you, then I would recommend, I personally make QC, if there's any important project, make QC results before and make QC results after, not necessarily wait until your 10th measurement, for example. Because the more careful you are and the more passing QC results you have leading up to that failed check also gives you information that's useful for diagnosis. That's the long answer. The short answer is yes, you would need to repeat those measurements that were made because you don't know when your system started going kerflooey. So that's why you want to make frequent QC checks.
Great. I think we had another question. Dr. G, yes, there is time for questions. So if you have a question, please feel free to chat that and we can.
I have a question, which is apparently for Mike on the water standard. Okay to go, Crystal?
Go for it.
And this is from Nate Burden. Should the water samples, when shipped, should the sample be refrigerated like coliform samples?
It does not, yes, it does not need to be. If you want to be cautious and smart, yes, you can, but there is no requirement. It's, again, if you looked at the certain time of year, now would be a good time. In the middle of the summer, middle of the winter, you might want to look at a cooler or some other way of keeping them from freezing or boiling.
Yeah, Mike, the laboratory itself will have instructions for anything that they may need because of their proprietary system.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, and then there's another question also related to the water standard. What causes a cloudy water sample that clears in a few minutes? That's from Don Ingram.
That I'm not sure, but I'm going to say dissolved air. I mean, that to me sounds like, my beer gets a lot of suds and it eventually clears up and becomes, much clearer. I would think the water has maybe some dissolved air in it.
Thanks.
We have one from Eric Roberts. Mike, why not take sample at wellhead before pressure tank?
A lot of places, I mean, how are you going to get the water sample? I mean, yes, if you can, that would be ideal. My house, you wouldn't be able to. So I think every place is going to be different. But yes, the closer you can get it to the wellhead, the better.
Awesome. Then Dr. G asks, any improvement on 10,000 value nationally and internationally?
Oh, you mean the 10,000 to 1 conversion?
I believe that's what he's asking.
I don't know of any work being done on that.
Okay, Jane or Amy, Nicole, do you see any other questions?
I see no other questions. I think Gary was supposed to speak.
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, do you see my screen?
It's blank, but we see it.
Does it have a logo on it?
Yes, it does, Gary.
Okay, I'll try to be quick because I know we've got time going on. Basically, oops, sorry. I don't know what, okay.
You're at the bottom, Gary. Go up to your whatever slide you want to start from.
Well, this is the starting slide. It's not being as
It looks like it's at the end of your slideshow. It's on slide 39.
all right. Oh, you're at the end? Ah, well, let's go to the beginning. Sorry, everyone. There we go. There we go. Yeah, at the end, now at the beginning. So our work in making standards has been making its way into the world, the fabric of what's going on out there, both at HUD and various state health departments, and as well as in other national standards being cited. All of that work is due to the partners that we work with, EPA, CRCPD, HUD, AARST, of course, being the sponsor of all that. And the main thanks, of course, is to the people who spend the time, all these volunteers that spend so much time. And why do they volunteer for standards? Basically, to find the practices that protect families, help make it clear to the world that radon is real and that the professionals can be trusted who are out there, and to promote a level playing field. And this, of course, is very important. Most of us know that in the field. At the consortium website, as you can see that's out there now, people can even go to and review the standards for free. If people are questioning you in the field, they can send them right there. The standards would be there to look it up. But your participation is critical. Committees, that's obviously the place where you can voice your opinions in a more direct way, but it does take a commitment. Web meetings are about every 2 weeks when a committee's active. Participation usually entails a couple of years, though a person can withdraw at any time, and nobody can make every meeting. But a lot of people, dozens and dozens, have helped. Public review is very important in your participation. Some of the most important things we've come up with have happened with public review. Comments, you just get a comment and you go, of course, we forgot about that. All these years, no one's mentioned it again. There's other options. We're under continuous maintenance programs now, so change requests can be made for things in standards, requests for interpretation, and of course, there's always a door open for administrative aid. Volunteering on the website, you can see that the request for participation forms are right there, processing public review comments, change requests. We've been moving into standing committees so we can look at technical and practical improvements with new participants, new experiences over the last 5 or 10 years, boiling down things to essentials so we can get, the deep side of things. It requires a lot of deep thought and people think about things seriously, but we operate in a open discussion situation, are courteous and kind to each other at all times. And the standing committees are working.
How it goes, Gary.
What?
That's exactly how it goes. Not like a video at all.
That's right. The harmonization work is what we're mostly involved in now, looking for identical tasks, cleaning up and aiding the clarity. Most of the guidance is being moved out of the body of the standard. And a good example of what's going on, Mitigation Standing Committee has been working to harmonize across the 3 standards. You will soon be seeing publications that have a 2012 addendum or 1220 addendum, December 20. And most all of the mitigation standard language for ASD has been harmonized across all 3 standards. So you don't have to read each one for that section. That's the type of work going on. A measurement, we've got a major improvement intellectually for the larger building standards that we'll publish this next year for measurement. The QA standards, Melinda's been elegant in describing what's been going on there. We have new construction work that'll come up this year. There's this 2021, we're forming a standing committee to harmonize these. Standing committee for water. Most of the people are staying on, but water mitigation standards important. And we need people who actually have screwed up on putting water systems in to be part of that committee. That's how we, the screw ups is how we know what to write in the standards. There's another last committee on long-term stewardship. This is where we talk about you should retest every 2 years, but a standard would be for certain things like large building, you shall recommend every 2 years. That's what this project's about. Unlike most of the standards organizations, and I was just experienced this at 3 different places this year, other organizations are dabbling in radon standards. This process specifically ensures that actual experts from the field are represented. There's some smart people and stuff, but if you haven't been out there, competition, everything else, it doesn't make sense. And but it also ensures balance of all the other people who might be affected, including the states and federal concerns that come on. It's a balanced situation. So, you know, don't trust me, trust the process that we do. That's an ANSI accredited process. Each of our programs, AARST, NRPP, the AARST Consortium on National Standards, there are different people involved, different rules, and different ways of getting things done. And each one has a little different situation going on, but it is how it works. And but each of these programs can use a helping hand. These are your programs. These are your standards. And lastly, on my slide, disallowed during standards meeting, flirting. We do a little of that. Blatant pomposity. I've seen plenty of that. Kissing. I haven't seen that, but I think I've wondered sometimes. Cussing, that comes out once in a while. Discourteous conduct and words. No, that's disallowed. But that's all I had. And I just wanted to thank everybody for being at this conference, as well as all the participants. They each deserve at least one beer when you run into them. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you to all of our speakers from our first fast track. So now I believe that we are heading into our next session. So you'll have to leave this session. We are going into our awards for AARST and CRCPD. So you're going to want to go into that and click on the play.
And then Crystal, immediately after that is a hybrid session with Peter Hendrick. It's a recorded session also, so you go into the next one, the 11:50 session, click on play. But a hybrid session means that Peter is live in chat with you. So attendees, if everyone goes into the next session, back to the agenda, click on the next one, hit record, play session, and then proceed to the next recorded session and hit play again. View session. I think you'll be ending right about at our lunch break. And our lunch break is from 12 to 1:30. And that is also an awesome time to check in on our exhibitor hall and exhibitors. And after you finish with the morning sessions as recordings, we'll see you back at 1:30 sharp.
Great. And I encourage you to watch these next sessions. I'm really proud of the awards this year. So please end out of here and go straight to that award session.
Great. Thank you, Crystal.